Thank you very much. My name is Edmond Yakani, Executive Director of Community Empowerment for Progress Organization. I would like to take this opportunity for this press conference specifically to respond as a national organization, as a human rights-based organization on the situation of Sherikat that we have seen been unfolding since yesterday. And we feel it has reached to a level that we cannot maintain silence about it. It's good to speak about it. So I'm reading out our position paper, our statement as a CEPO, is that CEPO calls for calm on Sherikat situation. The ongoing violent situation in Sherikat residential area over land dispute between citizens and Colonel Lol Accord is disturbing, and it is a situation that requires to be mitigated in non-violent approach. CEPO calls for calm. As I repeat, citizens should avoid taking the law into their hands, and the state authorities should refrain from using excessive power against the citizens. As Executive Director of Community Empowerment for Progress Organization, we are saying that the incident of Sherikat over the land ownership that have claimed lives of innocent citizens should be taken by the government seriously, because it's a matter of land governance. And the issue of land governance is very important to be handled by the state through genuine and functional policy. The absence of land policy in the country have attributed to deadly resolution of land disputes across the country since the independence of South Sudan from the rest of Sudan from 2011. Further, the absence of a clear governance policy, land governance policy, has made powerful individuals who are public officials to abuse their powers for grabbing community and individual lands illegally. It's a time to accelerate state commitment for enactment of a national land governance policy. Land governance is the next factor that will trigger deadly violence across the country if the state fails to enact genuine functional land governance in the country. CEPO is urging the public and politicians not to politicize the situation of Sherikat incident. Let it be a case that will be handled through rule of law process where a competent court of law will be used. The state should not allow any form of impunity to prevail over this case of Sherikat. Finally, CEPO is calling for calm and urge social media platform users not to engage in politicizing the Sherikat situation by promoting hate and hostile propaganda. To conclude with, I would like to raise a specific calls. First, I would like to call on South Sudan People's Defense Force to take responsibility of the funeral of those who have lost their lives due to the situation in Sherikat. Because we feel that those who have lost their lives in Sherikat, their families may be having constraint on how to handle the funeral. So I will ask South Sudan People's Defense Force to take responsibility of that. But also I'd like to ask the Chief of Staff for South Sudan People's Defense Force to take serious steps from the incident of Sherikat about the control behaviors of some soldiers who want to use their power to pursue their personal interests while using the privileges of the South Sudan People's Defense Force. Because I've seen this incident that a person who claimed to be a soldier using the power and using his title to grab land. So we need to say discipline within our army, and our army must respect the principle of they as a military being subject to civilian rule. Thank you very much. One of the issue I would like to raise is that we have been facing a lot of political challenges in this country. And one of the political challenges that we've been facing in this country is the issue of land governance, as you said. Many public officials abuse their titles and abuse the powers of their offices to grab land, as I've said in the beginning, either community or individual lands. And if you see the incidence of land grabbing across South Sudan is huge, and it has claimed lives of people, as you have said. My advice will be is that public officials should be disciplined. They should be disciplined by the government once they start abusing their office powers to grab land. Because there's a culture of impunity that quite a number of public land were being grabbed and nobody is held accountable. So it became a common practice for anybody just to assume a public office powers and use that for grabbing land. As you said, for example, there's a lot of issues related to land. You might have seen what has happened to the Juba Day School when they took a land for Freedom Hospital. And the fear is that hospital close to school where children are was a dispute. But this is being bullied by politicians because they use their political powers and they use state machinery to silence citizens, to silence communities. And as a government who is entrusted by citizens, if you continue using state power to bully citizens in issue of land, one day citizens will turn against you. And you might have seen the one of Sherikat because it's a result of occurrence of land grabbing and no accountability. That's why citizens feel time has come for us to show the authorities what we mean by land governance, or how we are also having a power to own land. So land ownership is too much politicized in South Sudan, and it's too much illegally being governed, issues of access to land. So my advice to the government is that it's a high time for government to establish policy on land governance. This is one. Two, issues of land in South Sudan in terms of land governance, there's no clear structure between where is the limits of the central government officials in related to land ownership, where is the powers of the state, where is the powers of the local government. Anybody feels empowered. And specifically in the case of Sherikat, I was shocked to see a central government intervene to the case of Sherikat without a state. But of course also we have a challenge that state government are not functional. But if you come to reality, land governance need to be administered by sub-national levels. That means land need to be administered by states and by local government. So central government only develop policy. But unfortunately, people in central government are dealing with land and undermining the other levels of government. I'll give you, the issue of land is not only the ownership of land, as I said. Ownership of land always have attachment to commercial benefits. For example, you may need to own the land to make hotel. So your interest is to make money through hotel. You may own the land to make a petrol station. You may grab the land because you feel this land you can build assets. And sometimes you can grab a land to control natural resources. All these are issues that are so much embraced by officials in central government because of their powers and their status. And in specific, our South Sudanese in uniform. I will tell you, one day I've come across somebody say, you want to protect your land? Wear a uniform. You have a uniform, nobody will protect your land. So should we all be soldiers to protect our land? I don't think. You know, my fear is we are migrating as South Sudanese that whenever we have dispute, the culture of negotiation, the culture of mediation slowly is disappearing from our society. We're getting to the culture that whenever there's a dispute, the only means to resolve your dispute is the bullet. So once we start building the culture of resolving our problem through the bullet of the gun or through the barrel of the gun, so everybody will have to own a gun in order. So actually you can hear some citizens say, if you want to complete your manhood or you want to show yourself that you are powerful, you must have AK-47. You must have AK-47. And even people are saying, you find citizens are fearing cameras, but they can run from cameras, but they can't run out of AK-47. So we're building a culture that resolution of any dispute must be resolved by the barrel of the gun. This is dangerous. This is building a society of militias. This is building the society of bandages. And actually, slowly, we are migrating to become a Somalia. That even prayer, you must pray while AK-47 is closed because you don't have a trust whoever comes across to you. So our appeal is our government need to embrace, by all possible means, making rule of law prevail. Once the rule of law does not prevail, the rule of the gun will prevail. And our interest is that we don't see the rule of the gun to prevail. That's why in the concept of global community, with the responsibility of global ethics, we will be continue receiving things like arms embargo on us. Because we are not living on an island of our own. We have citizens of other nations here. We are receiving foreign aid of other nations here. Taxpayers of other nations have been used in this country, like in the COVID-19. We have been receiving free masks. We have been receiving a lot of these testing materials. Whose money was being used? It's taxpayers of other countries. So the only way we must behave per the international ethics, whereby we don't use gun, we don't use the barrel of the gun to resolve our problem, because this bullet can go and kill innocent foreign citizen of another country whom their taxpayers have lifted our life from suffering. Obviously, my key messages goes to the government, and specifically I would say government is built of several institutions. The immediate institution, the government, we need them to handle this situation is the security institution and the Minister of Justice. They have to simultaneously handle this issue of yesterday and making sure that justice prevails and making sure that those who are perpetrators are held accountable and the power of the law is applied, or the use of the law is applied. Competent court of law have to take it up. That's why we're calling, there's no need to embrace or there's no need for the government to allow any form of impunity to prevail over this case. Nobody should go free. Whoever is a perpetrator must face the law and the course of the law must take itself. Thank you very much. First, referring to your first question, why is Sherikat case become more unique compared to the other previous cases? One thing I like to raise about Sherikat case is that Sherikat case has become a clear demonstration of citizens' frustration about absence of justice to the previous case. Why? It's no longer a case of an individual and group of people whom feel that the particular perpetrator might have interfered with their land. It has become a political issue. And not only political, it has taken a trend of ethnic clash. Because you might have seen after Sherikat incidents, Bor is on strike. And simply, our brothers and sisters from Bor feel they are targeted in this issue of Sherikat. So we feel it's taking a different dimension. It's taking a political dimension. But it's a result of denial of justice in the past that have made Sherikat case to take that, because citizens are frustrated that all land issues either is being manipulated in the court of law, or either the court remain silent about that. And that's the only way is now to use Sherikat case to demonstrate seriously their frustration and they are being fed up with Sherikat. In terms of justice, one thing that I would like to raise is that our judicial system, in terms of taking independence in such cases, is questionable. I have to be honest and sincere as a human rights defender, because all land disputes, you come to realize that if you're not powerful in terms of having money and having political title, whether you can call it Ben, you call it Kormadit, you call it Mutulawaran, you will never win a case in the court, even if the case is benefiting you. Those are the things. So if you start using Kormadit, Ben, and Mutulawaran, you start using titles, generals, brigadiers, to win a case in the court, then the independence of the court is questionable. And partly is why what has been reflected in Sherikat is that there's a justice denial. There's a manipulation of justice. And that's what people are saying. We're fed up. It's a time for us to show justice. And normally when you start getting justice through citizens taking the law into their hands, it's very deadly. It's disastrous. This can lead to political events that may lead the country to unfold in terms of peace and stability. In regard to security actors, I think there's a concept that people believe once you are in uniform, you are above the law. And this is what has made people in uniform to undermine other state institutions that have constitutional mandate to administer public issues, like Land Commission. Today, should send a Land Commission person to go to Sherikat. If he carries no AK-47, no stars, no security uniform, nobody will listen to the Land Commission. While constitutionally, it's Land Commission supposed to mitigate this issue. Land Commission will be calling for court, a land dispute court. The Ministry of Justice and the Judiciary is silent about that. Simply because once you have a land court, you can't manipulate land issues. That's one thing that I like to raise it. In terms of competent court, I think this is a test for our judiciary. And specifically is a test to a revitalized government of what is been enshrined in the peace agreement, that we need to see the independence of the judiciary. Sherikat is going to be the first pilot case to test the parties through the revitalized agreement, whether really what they say in the agreement that they want independence of judiciary will be seen. So for me, this is a clear exercise. And it's a question also of building trust and confidence, whether the agreement will build for us an independent judiciary system. Or are we going to continue with the attitude of Ben Kormadit and then Brigadier General is above the law? And otherwise, and this is, let me tell you, this will make everybody to become brigadier, everybody to become a politician, and everybody to create a title that, I must have this title in order to win a case in the court of law. Because the titles work much more better than the law itself. So for me, this is an appeal that Sherikat case should be a clear case study that our government need to change and approach in regard to land governance. Okay, let me start with the question of refugees. Land is one of the factors that informs refugees and IDPs to make a voluntary decision to return. Because if an IDP or a refugee is returning, he's not returning to an air. He's returning to where there's a land so that he or she can settle. So if we talk about refugees and IDPs' right to voluntary decision in order to return to the area of origin or to an area of choice, because they have two options. Either go to area of choice or the area of origin as refugees or as IDPs, as return is concerned. But the question we have is that in some parts of the country, there's a competition over the use of the land between farmers and pastoralists, using the land for keeping cattle or using the land for farming. And that has resulted to governance of land to become owned by power. This has impact, specifically border towns like Nimule, And you might have seen even issues of land recently have made MPs from Equatorial region to meet president, to meet vice president, because they have seen influx of cattle to Magui area, to Nimule area. And why these cattle are having influx there? Simply because where original these cattle are, there's a dispute over the land there. The dispute either because the use of grazing, cattle grazing, exposed cattle to be raided. So it's a broader issue. That's what I'm saying. Our government must take land governance as a big issue. It's not only land physical as a soil. It have attachment to other privileges. People are running away with cattle from the original communities because their cattle, due to grazing on land, they're exposed to raiding. They're taken over. And they create violence. And they have to move to where they can minimize chance of cattle raiding so that at least they can minimize stability. But also where they're migrating is they may find a land of other people like farmers. And the farmers will feel that they cannot farm because the land is being occupied or the land or their crops are exposed to cattle. So it's a question that we all as South Sudanese have the equal rights to use the land. But we need to use the land according to the law. And it's a responsibility of the government to enact a law that makes us use the land in a better way. Because otherwise, if we don't have regulations on how to use the land, we can't. But let me give an example. Use of land between pastoralists and farmers. If we are to be a state that is abide by the law, you can bring cattle to farming land during dry season because their dung will help. Their species will help in farming crops. That is done. Then you can also use that to generate crops. So when rain season, like right now we're in farming, when farming situation comes, automatically you come to realize that pastoralists have helped farmers with the land, with the cattle, then these cattle will help the what? Will help the land generate better crops. And also all of us are depending, we need to see a homegrown food. That's a balance between use of land, between pastoralists and farmers. And we can benefit. It's just a matter of we must adhere to rule of law. We must respect what the law say about the use of what? Of land. That's what I would like to refer to. On what has happened at the border, as you bring to your question, my position will be that this is a normal situation that we're facing among borders. So it's a question of how do we coordinate our borders governance system. So it's not unique with us, our case, that we have clashed with the UPDF of Uganda at the border. We recently have seen also between Ethiopia and Sudan at the border, that Sudan soldiers were killed because Ethiopian apologized. So it's a question of coordination, it's a question of what? Of putting together. But my input is that we need to see justice to prevail in such a situation. That's what I will answer you. Yes, sister? Okay. I think for me, we have a government, South Sudan government. The government have the responsibility to ensure justice prevails. I don't want to preempt. We heard from our Minister of Interior, have made a very clear statement that they have caught the perpetrators, they will face the rule of law. So we must adhere to the position of our Minister of Interior. That's what we need to look into it. And we don't want to predict that if a perpetrator disappears, the perpetrator is only one. Of course, what next you have is that compensation play a role. You have to compensate the land to those who are rightful owners of the land. And such it's not a one case, it's a similar case. So for me, my appeal, what I'm appealing as a South Sudanese, as civil society activist, that the Ministry of Interior have clearly, and even our Chief of Staff yesterday, have made it very clearly, the law will take its course. So my appeal to citizens is that let us allow the law to take its course per the institution of government speaking. Like the Ministry of Interior have mentioned very clear, the perpetrators are under custody, they will face the law. So my appeal is that as citizens, I'm calling them, remain calm and let the law take its course per the statement come from our Minister of Interior. And that's why I'm appealing for people who are social media users, stop hate speech, stop hostile propaganda. Whatever we have dispute, we must find a way of how to resolve the dispute rather than making the dispute to go to a bigger scale, because it benefits none of us. All of us need to see that anything between us, it's resolved in a non-violent, in a peaceful way that we don't lose more lives. But as a society, let me also share with you, as a society, we can't avoid such situations. It will always happen in our society. It has happened to us. We have seen what's going on in the US. But the best way to society is that allow authorities to take its, and that's why I'm appealing to the authorities that there's no need to embrace any impunity in such situation, so that at least we make sure that the laws that we have in our country prevail and resolve the problem. I think yesterday, I have to be honest, yesterday we have been following the situation. And I'm quite sure the IGP of the police and the Chief of Staff of the Army have rushed to the base to calm the situation. And that's why we're saying, whenever you have such unfolding situation, you need to see a proper governance of people who are sent to provide security and safety. Because some individuals may take the situation to abuse it. And normally it's everywhere that once you send a number of people to control the situation, somebody can abuse the law. And that's why we're appealing that whenever our authorities are sending people to create safety and security, there's a need to have a proper governance and proper leadership so that none of them will abuse the law, either because emotional is being affected or emotional being disturbed. So that's what I like to call. And that's why I'm saying the culture of peaceful protest is to be the one in which I'll embrace. As a citizen, don't take situation, then you want to loot. No. Go peacefully and demand it peacefully. I'm quite sure the law will allow you to do that. But also I'm asking authority, when citizens are going peacefully, let us not disturb peaceful demonstration culture, because that will make them to express their views, and out of that, as authority, we know exactly what they want. So I think for me, that will be tech. The tech is that let us embrace the culture of non-violence in whatever situation we're doing.
What if they go violent?
Obviously, the law will take its course. Being it the civilians or being it the member of security, you go violently, you will face the law. And that's why we're waiting for what the Minister of Interior have said. Anybody who takes the law into their hands will face the what? The law. Because we have laws in this country, and the laws are not silent. And let me tell you, you cannot know the law until when you commit a crime. Then you don't come to realize that there's a law in this country that prevails. So let's avoid committing crimes to face the law. That's my appeal.